Hi, I'm Bill Crum from News OK and the Oklahoman. Our guest today is Ward 3 Councilman Larry McAtee. Councilman McAtee represents a portion of southwest Oklahoma City. And he is the chairman of the Airport Trust.
That's correct, sir.
And the Economic Development Trust here in Oklahoma City. And we're going to talk about the proposal that was made last week to spend $10 million of MAPS funds, sales tax proceeds, to build a new parking garage and contribute to the construction of a new surface parking lot in the new convention center district, which is coming when the convention center is built.
That's correct, sir.
The first question that I had is, what's the case for using MAPS money to build a parking garage? There were 8 projects that were promised to voters through resolution of the council. In 2009, voters approved a capital expenditures item for MAPS, and the council promised those projects. Parking was not among them, but Tom McDaniel, the chairman of the MAPS advisory board, has mentioned parking as an intended consequence of the streetcar, park, convention center, the big projects downtown. What's the case in favor of using MAPS money for a parking garage?
The parking garage and the surface lot that were talked about last Thursday, Bill, will provide access for people who want to use the downtown park when it's constructed and the convention center when it's constructed, and will be a point to also avail themselves of getting on the modern streetcar when it's completed. So it will be servicing primarily the needs of the patrons who will be using those 3 MAPS 3 venues. Ergo, we need parking to make it accessible. Let's use some funds to do that.
The garage also could serve Chesapeake Arena.
It's also arena, and that's of course a MAPS for Arena project. That's a very good point. It's within 2 blocks of that particular venue. And at some point in time, the parking under the Myriad, the Cox Center, may go away 5-10 years from now. So it'll be available at that time for those patrons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the money, the $10 million would, I think the motivation for drawing the $10 million from MAPS, if indeed it happens, and the proposal is going to go back to the MAPS subcommittees. It come before the Citizens Advisory Board again in a month. Still hasn't come before the City Council. The Council will make the final decision. The motivation behind looking at that money, I think to some extent, is that MAPS has been wildly successful, at least pretty successful, in exceeding projections for how much money would be collected. And there's about $40 or $42 million in contingency, excess collections, and interest that are in the MAPS accounts now.
That is correct.
Is that correct? But there are 3 big construction contracts yet to be settled in MAPS 3. On October 11th, the bids come in for building the streetcar, which is about a $131 million project overall. And I think the construction is supposed to be somewhere in the $54 million range. Then the park is another big one, about the same amount of money. And then the convention center construction contract will come later, and it is the biggest of the MAPS project. So there's some unknowns out there.
There are some unknowns, but built into the budgets of each of those 3 venues are contingency funds to try to address as many of those unknowns as possible. But it's entirely conceivable that there will be even more unknowns as we move forward with those 3 big venues, yes.
Now we know from Steve Lagmeyer's reporting this weekend that the Convention Center Hotel, the headquarters hotel, is going to require a public subsidy. At least the operator is asking for one, and the estimate is $85 million.
That's the current status of that, yes.
Right. And the city has got a number of tools that it can use and you're the chairman of the Economic Development Trust, you know a lot about this kind of stuff. Tax increment financing, I think they call them GOLT bonds, which are general obligation bonds that are focused on particular types of economic development that would be brought to bear in order to get together that public subsidy for the hotel, which is what, a 19-story hotel, 600 rooms, I think?
600 rooms are what the committee has asked for at this point, and that's what the successful supplier of the hotel, the Omni folks, that's what they have recommended at this point. It sits at 600 rooms.
Okay, and COTPA, the Central Oklahoma Transportation and Parking Authority, which would build the parking garage, has got the ability to bond for about $27 million, or borrow $27 million.
They have a bonding capacity, as we sit here right now, I'm told, of $27 million, yes.
So
And that money could be used to fund the building of parking garages that we're talking about here to support the MAPS 3 projects.
And that would be combined with the $10 million that it's proposed to use for MAPS.
That could be combined, yes.
It could be, to build that parking garage. Is the city kind of riding on the edge with regard to the number of financial tools that it can bring to bear to get the convention center hotel, and the associated parking built?
Well, that's a judgment call. I happen to be a Christian and believe in using biblical principles. So when I look at these things, I look at it through maybe a highly conservative set of eyes, maybe more conservative than you might look at it. As I look at this, I feel comfortable that should we move forward and allocate $10 million of monies to the addition of parking for those 3 venues, that will be a wise expenditure of monies and still leave additional contingency money available should we need one for some reason, especially on those 3 high dollar venues that you've talked about. Mm-hmm. The longer we wait before we pull the trigger on that, the more certainty that we have that we will not need that $10 million for those venues. So there's a risk-reward factor there that will have to be judged as we move forward at this point and make our final decision.
If MAPS is supposed to raise $777 million, that was the goal, by December 31st of 2017.
That's
so
correct.
About we're 15 months and a few days ahead of that. If the collections and the trend hold up, and the bids on the park, the convention center, and the streetcar come in at what the city expects them to be, if there's money left over, at some point, everybody wants to spend some of that money. All the subcommittees, and the subcommittees are volunteer advisory boards. There are on the order of 70 citizen volunteers who take a great deal of interest in MAPS, and they're very protective of their projects, and they're also very concerned that the public's money be spent the way the public wants it to be spent, and they're concerned about oversight. They take their role very seriously. But they also, it's evident from the last few months that they also would like to have more money to spend if they can get it. What do you think should happen to the money? Should there be money left over?
This is the first time in the MAPS lifetime here in Oklahoma City that we are facing a potential challenge of having excess money.
Which is a good problem to have.
It's a great problem to have. It shows the prudence and the accuracy, the dedication, the passionate for these committees in keeping their desires up to this point in check to make sure that the projects that have already been started and are already completed are under budget. We would hope to have that same good success with the streetcar, with the downtown park, and with the convention center. Only time will tell whether we're able to accomplish that. We had the same problem or challenge with the arena when we did the maps for the arena. There we didn't have enough money. And so the committee, and I happened to sit on that committee, had to value engineer that project to fit it in the budget. So we have experience with managing these funds. Now, what do you do if you have extra funds? Until that day comes, it's really hypothetical. One thing you could do would be to add some of the things that were left out the first go around, some of the extra amenities that would add value to the particular venue, and that would include all the venues. You could, for example, pave more miles of trails. You could pave more sidewalk miles. You could add certain ambiances to the health senior wellness center. You could add something maybe to the fairgrounds. Until we have a grasp of whether or not we have, in fact, extra money, it's kind of superfluous to talk about that. Be rest assured, if we do, it will be invested wisely, just like all the MAPS money, by all the volunteer citizens, subcommittees, and committees have done up to this point.
I think the council is devoted to the idea of managing the city in a fiscally conservative manner.
I would agree 100%, sir.
And you're right in the middle of that, leading the Economic Development Trust, sitting on the Ward 3 seat since
2001.
2001, and you're running for re-election?
And one of the reasons I'm running for re-election is to make sure that this MAPS initiative that we started way back does get completed in a way that the citizens can say, we trust Oklahoma City, we believe in its leadership, we believe in its vision, and we believe in the way that we're going.
And that credibility could set the stage for continuing MAPS in the future?
It could set the stage for any variety of potential investments in the future. No decision has been made. People are brainstorming. That's great. Without a vision, the people perish. We need to have a vision for our children and our grandchildren to keep the progress of Oklahoma City moving forward.
Thank you very much. Again, I'm Bill Crum for News OK and the Oklahoman. Our guest today, Larry McAtee, the councilman from Ward 3. He has served on the city council since 2001, and the election is in February, and he's running for another term then?
That's correct.
Congratulations.
Thank you,
and
Bill.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure, sir.